Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing horror discussions, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Norway.
I'm really proud of us. We keep saying we got to watch more horror movies, and here we are. We're doing it. No, sorry. I mean more foreign movies.
But also more indie horror. And this is the best of both worlds.
Yes, it is. I really confidently said that just now.
So we're talking about The Ugly Stepsister today, which is a Shudder original that we were lucky enough to see in theaters, which is always the best way to see any movie.
Yes, especially horror, though.
Long story short, the movie's fantastic.
So good.
It's brutal, it's gruesome, it's thoughtful, it's incredibly provocative, and I've been thinking about it for days.
Yeah, it really like overdid it on the expectations. Like we went in, we're like, oh, it's probably gonna be fine. Like it looks fun, sure, let's go see it. And like it was great. It was really, really good.
The first flag to throw here at the beginning is the marketing.
Yeah.
So the marketing campaign, and I get it because The Substance was nominated for a bunch of Oscars, which is rare enough for a horror film.
Yeah, incredible.
But this film is not like The Substance that much.
No, it is marketed as such, but it isn't quite. I mean, there's definitely some crossover. They're both like intense body horror about the experience of being a woman and adhering to beauty standards.
I think it's reductive.
That's kind of where it ends. Yeah.
And I think it sets wrong expectations because the film that this reminded me of way more than The Substance, which we also loved, we did an episode on that one.
It's incredible.
Is Autumn de Wilde's adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma from a few years ago.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Because it feels like an evolution, and this isn't, I don't mean qualitatively, but it feels like a more modern version of Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, those classics from about 20 years ago. Emma had that modern snappiness. It had the sharpness of writing and editing. It was incredibly quick. It almost had a YouTube kind of sensibility to it, the way it was edited.
And interestingly, it feels really in line with Jane Austen. I feel like that movie, and I won't get too into it. We have a whole episode about Emma, and we have an episode about Pride and Prejudice. I'm a big Jane Austen fan, if you didn't know. But I think that the Autumn de Wilde Emma has... It nails Jane Austen's humor and wit and quickness the most accurately and effectively compared to any other adaptation that I've seen. Even though it does feel very modern, I think that's why Jane Austen is so great and so beloved still, is because her writing does feel very modern.
Very funny.
Yeah, it's so funny, and it's so quick and like almost making fun of itself and you the whole time, and that feels very fun. And I got a sense of that in this movie as well.
It's just darker.
Yeah.
It's more of a black humor layered on top of it. And obviously there's body horror too. You know that from the trailer. You know that from the poster. You know that from the original Grimm fairy tale.
Yes.
Because this is sort of a riff on the classic Cinderella fable. And that was the second flag I wanted to throw here, was to talk about Cronenberg for a second.
Oh, sure.
Because anytime you talk about body horror or mutilation, someone brings up David Cronenberg for good reason. I think a pioneer in that subgenre.
Sure.
But the thing I love about him, and the thing I love about his style of body horror, is present here. And it's not just about gore. It's never just about gore. It's always about this spiraling, intense characterization. Where I feel like any of his films that I've seen, they feel like meditations on cruelty. They're not just depictions of dismemberment. It's serving something almost metaphorically under the surface.
Yeah, it's making you contemplate something. It's not, and it's exposing the horror of an issue. It's not just, hey, wouldn't it be so freaky if somebody, tried to sew eyelashes to your eyelids? It's actually like, isn't it so horrible how we have to adhere to certain standards to feel okay about ourselves? Like, that's really what's happening here.
And I like just splatter movies. We've talked about plenty of the Terrifier. We've talked about those before. But I think this style of Cronenberg type body horror is more about character dissection, where alongside the actual dismemberment, you have really intense, kind of aching characterization.
Yes.
Because so much of this story is about the central character, Elvira. It's about her transformation, physically, emotionally, all of it. But it's made incredibly physical, where you're marveling at these like brutal surgeries that she's going through. You're recoiling as she is, as people are swinging hammers and anvils at her head to mess up her nose. But it always feels like it's serving the character.
Yes,
versus slashers where it's just, someone is getting destroyed.
Yeah, right. This is a like physical and like a visual manifestation of the character transformation that's happening, of the emotional state, of the situation, of the story, right? And I don't think we want to imply that something like a slasher, like that the gore in there is serving no purpose and that it's gratuitous, because I don't think that can exist. I love a really, really gory slasher.
Me too.
It's just serving a different purpose, and I appreciated the purpose that the gore was serving here.
It's not serving an intense, interrogating, meditative characterization like I think the Cronenberg style does.
Right.
But this feeling that I'm describing, this emotional reaction that I think we both had to everything that Elvira goes through here, when I describe it as aching or recoiling, but it's always serving this character focus, I'm describing sympathy. And audience sympathy. And I think, to zoom out a little, that's what this body horror serves. And I think that's just the larger question and fascination of the film, is this wandering sympathy through the narrative. And here's where I want to turn it into a question.
Okay.
Did you feel that the film was ultimately sympathizing with Elvira or Agnes? Agnes, of course, is the Cinderella parallel.
Right. Yes. I think it was sympathizing with both. I think that's what I liked about this movie so much, is I went in assuming it was going to be, okay, this is Cinderella from the stepsister's perspective. And that's a standard formula we've seen time and time again, especially the last 20 years.
A retelling of Pride and Prejudice.
Oh God, Pride and Prejudice. I'm not even going to get there. But so, and so I was like, okay, I was assuming Cinderella was going to be the villain. And at the beginning, she's kind of posed as that. Agnes is very pompous and very just stuck up and doesn't accept these new people into her family.
They're on opposite ends of the food chain.
Very much so. And she's, of course, gorgeous and beautiful in a way that that Elvira is not, and is not portrayed to be. But as the story unfolds, you understand Agnes and her story very, very well. You sympathize with her greatly, especially when it comes to the stable boy that she's in love with. And so by the time you get to the end where they're both fighting for the same goal, to marry this prince, you understand for both of them why they want to do it. I mean, it mainly comes down to money and the societal world that they exist in, where it's Victorian Norway, but feels very Victorian England, in that I just don't know a whole lot about Norway, but I know a lot about England. But a woman's, livelihood is dependent on who she marries, and who she marries is dependent on her physical beauty and appearance and familial status and that kind of thing. And so they are both really trying to lean into that so that they can survive. And they've both suffered a loss. Agnes has lost her father, and Elvira has lost her whole sense of self. And her mother has sort of really become distant and awful and cruel in her own way. And so they're both fighting.
She's organizing these brutal surgeries.
Yes.
For her.
And so they're both fighting for the same goal. And also they have the common enemy of the mother, because for Agnes, it's her evil stepmother who's making her become a servant in her own home and did never let her grieve her father properly.
Won't pay for a funeral. She's just letting the body rot in the other room.
Yeah. And so you're like, I feel for both of these women. We're still very much in Elvira's perspective. It's still very much her story, but you watch things happen with Agnes too, and you're like, I get it.
They're definitely rivals, even though their fortunes reverse over the course of the film. But I was impressed that Agnes never felt like a villain. I think there was a sympathy on both sides. And I could make the same argument for the mother, Rebecca, or the other sister, Alma.
Yes.
I think we see them be victims of their circumstance as well. We see the way the mother is trying to keep the family afloat in all of the relationships she has with the other guys at court through the movie.
Well, right. It's all four of these women navigating survival in different ways.
Yes,
and
survival.
No way is some of them are better than others, I should say, but none of them are perfect. None of them are seamless or painless or ideal. They're all struggles, and they're all horrific in their own way. They all experience their own horror throughout the movie. And I think that's the larger message, is the conditions that they're existing in not only force them to do horrible things to survive, but also force them to turn against one another.
Yes.
They can't unite. They can't be a family. They can't rely on each other. There's no sisterhood. There's no, great mother-daughter relationships. There's no friendship. It's just fighting against each other. And you see that manifest really visually and literally in the dancing class that all the girls are in, and the beauty competitions. And the ball itself is just a competition among women, and there's no sense of camaraderie among them.
We understand their motivations as much as we understand their eventual turns. Because, it is kind of a spoiler, because we all just know the Cinderella story. That original fable felt so intimidating, because you could always see it coming on the horizon. It felt inevitable and almost all-powerful, where you knew how the pieces were going to be shuffled around, and then having a vague understanding of the original Brothers Grimm story,
Right.
you knew it was going to get more brutal.
It's going to get real bloody.
Body horror-y. But I was so taken by the film's empathy and sympathy and how it heightened and deepened the horror at all points.
Yes.
We just watched Pride and Prejudice. We got to see that for the anniversary screening, again in a theater with a full crowd.
20th anniversary. It was a lovely experience.
And the film is so exciting and beautiful and sweeping and funny, like you said before. But I loved the dance sequences so much because there is such rich relationship building.
Yes.
And so much of it is implied or suggestive or these tiny physical touches or movements. It's so poetic.
The 2020 Emma does that really well too. It's so
Nothing
good.
does it better than Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, that's fair.
But comparing that to the sequence of the ball at the end of The Ugly Stepsister, where it seems like Elvira's on top and she's going to win the heart of this absolute prick of a prince.
Yeah.
And the way it curdles and sours through that scene, I thought was just a masterstroke. It becomes so paranoid and heartbreaking once Agnes comes in.
Yes.
And the camera keeps swirling around and around as they're doing all these complex dance moves. But once she's with these other guys and watching the prince and watching Agnes, I just thought it took all of the delirium and movement and beauty of the Pride and Prejudice sequence and just turned it on its head.
Sure.
And it became so tragic.
Right.
And because I'd come to understand Agnes and Elvira so much, I knew that however the story was going to end, is it a retelling that changes the rules and the stepsister comes out on top? Or is it going to pivot back to the norm and Agnes is going to win? Either way, I knew I was going to feel just agony for one of these
For
women,
whoever lost.
because we'd gotten to know them so well and sympathize with them so much. I thought that was such an achievement in storytelling.
Sure. And you know what's so tragic about the ball scene, which I hadn't thought about until just now? When Agnes comes in, Cinderella, she's got a veil over her face, which I think in part is the way of like giving her anonymity, because it is ridiculous in the original
Try
tale.
again, Nemo?
Anonymity. I can never say that word. You know, she's anonymous.
Anemone.
I just, you got to rush through it and hope nobody notices. But it makes sense because in the original tale, it's absurd that he can't just like identify her face. But anyway, so they kind of get past that here. But I think what it also does is it's so sad because for the whole movie, Elvira has been undergoing all of these physical transformations of her face to look beautiful for the prince. She's also been starving herself through the tapeworm, but it's also all the stuff she's done to her face specifically. And yet Agnes is able to come in without even showing her face and immediately get the prince. And so it's like everything that Elvira did was for absolutely nothing. And then to even put it, just stick the knife in even more. Slight spoiler, but at the very end, when she falls down the stairs, she breaks her nose and she ruins her teeth. The things that she worked so hard and went through so much pain and agony to change and alter so that she could be beautiful. And it's all for nothing.
It's like the sequence in John Wick 4 when he falls down the entire endless staircase
up on
when he gets to the top.
Yeah, it's so sad.
And, well, I'm glad you mentioned the tapeworm because that's where I wanted to go next.
Oh, the tapeworm.
Because I found empathy to be this just grindstone thematically through the entire film. And I thought the way that concept was weaponized by the characters was really compelling too. Kind of the horror of empathy, the way that it is used against people. And I think the greatest example of that is the tapeworm, where you think the dance instructor is reaching out and sympathizing with Elvira, who's all alone and hates herself and has all of these confidence issues. And instead she gives her, you think she's giving her this little trinket, a piece of jewelry, something kind
nice.
of a token.
You're always beautiful. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
And she opens it up and there's an egg of a tapeworm inside of it.
It's like, here's an eating disorder. And it's awful.
it's such a wicked turn because it instantly corrupts that relationship, but it also puts Elvira on totally the wrong track.
Yes. And it's like so sad because again, it's like, it's the thing about how all these women are existing in this world. For the dance instructor, she thinks she's doing the right thing. She's like, here's how I can help you achieve what you want to achieve. Here's my little beauty secret. But it's actually this horribly damaging thing. And also the dance instructor probably knows that, like on the one hand, she thinks she's helping, but she also knows this could kill you. But I'm not going to really
about it later.
What do you mean? I don't remember.
She brags about giving her the tapeworm.
Oh, like I did that.
Else.
Yeah, but it's a way to put her on top.
course.
So it's pitting all the women against each other rather than them helping each other and supporting one another. It's the saddest thing. That tapeworm sequence at the end is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, please talk about that.
I guess we're spoiling the whole movie, but like it doesn't really matter. So, you
have to see it to believe it.
So she's expelling the tapeworm finally. It's like the sister comes in and says, "Hey, it's time to take the antidote. You got to get rid of this thing. It's going to kill you." And so it's
like poison that kills the tapeworm.
Yeah, so and it makes you throw it up. And so she takes the antidote and she starts, kind of heaving like she's going to puke, and the tapeworm starts to come out. But when I tell you that the thing keeps coming and coming and coming, and it's bigger and bigger and bigger, it is so horrifically disgusting. And it's at the very end of the movie. It's like one of the last horrific things that happens. So you've already experienced all these other horrible things. You experienced the nose jobs, the braces removal, the eyelash surgery, always like feeling horribly nauseous and sick because of the tapeworm and all these other things.
Binging, the whole, the relationship with food.
And the food is just so gross and it's so sad. But then it's like, this is like the culmination. This is the final thing apart from cutting the feet off. Like this is the worst thing. And it is so horrifically disgusting.
The thing I really appreciated about the tapeworm sequence is that it happened in private. Because I think the foremost struggle in the film, apart from the competition with the other girls and competing for the prince's hand, all of that, it is about her and herself and her self-image.
Yes.
It's very much an internal struggle.
Especially because the prince is like a horrible person and it's not about
and she
him.
knows that.
I know. She saw that. She meets him early on accidentally and he's so horrible to her. And yet she still continues to chase him and romanticize him in her head. Because you're right. It's not about him. It's about her. It's about her feeling good about herself. If the prince wants to marry me, that means I'm finally beautiful enough and good enough and worthy enough.
The fact that this like ultimate grotesque display happens when she's just with her sister, who she trusts and loves her unconditionally.
They do have the best relationship, yeah.
It was beautiful. As horrifying as the scene was, I thought there was a beauty to it in the way the sister reacted and helped her and took her away at the end of the film.
Yes.
And you knew she was going to take care of her. Even as she looked, the worst she has the whole movie. She's bleeding everywhere, and the sister didn't care and still was taking care of her. I thought that was... I mean, it fucked me up when I was watching the movie, but I think it's interesting to compare that with the ending of The Substance, which is very much about appearance and how other people objectify you. It's very much about performance. So that big body horror freakout at the end is as public as possible. It's televised. It's the blood fountains all over the studio audience.
Yeah.
I love the contrast between that and this with the hyper private and the hyper public.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I think, in The Substance, Demi Moore's character is wanting, both these characters are wanting approval of others, but for Demi Moore, I think it's about her public life, her public appearance, her fame,
persona,
her celebrity, right? And for Elvira, it's her own internal personal confidence and self-esteem, and that makes a lot of sense. I like that breakdown.
So zooming out a little bit, just to talk about the film as a whole, obviously it was playing with these fairy tales and fables and leaning into the horror and the body horror, the surrealism, these impossible fantasies. But as a woman, how real was this? How much of this tracked with puberty, with your I don't know how much to prompt you here, but just how much of this rang true?
It rang very, very, very true. And I was thinking about this too, like especially right now, we're in an age where altering your appearance has never been more normal and more expected, I think, than ever before. Like not only in terms of dyeing your hair and doing your makeup, but I mean like plastic surgery and like Botox and like lip filler and buccal fat removal and like ass implants and like I don't even know, that all of that is so normal and expected, especially if you're in the public eye. But even if you're not, if you're just like a normal person, and the way we've got like AI filters on social media and like nothing you see is real anymore, it rang very, very true. And it was like I understood every single thought that Elvira was having, and I totally understood how she felt, because it's not just, this is the thing about being a woman and being a girl in Western, I don't know what it's in my experience is what it's like in society, is like not only do you want to look good for yourself, for the approval of men and also women and just others around you, but it's also that you want to look good in comparison to everybody else. Because you can sit in front of the mirror and look at yourself and be happy or unhappy with how you look. But the second you look at a picture of another woman, you're like, oh, I look awful. Like, it doesn't matter who they are. If they're even slightly good looking, you automatically hate yourself because you don't look exactly like that person. And this is the problem, is that everybody's unique. Everybody looks different. But the way things are now, we all like are sort of told to look like one kind of person, like to have this kind of nose, this kind of facial structure, this kind of hair, this kind of teeth. Like, everybody wants to look the same now. That's why when you look at like the Kardashians, for example, they all look like the same person, not because they're related, but because they've all altered their physical appearances to look exactly the same. Because there's one standard.
They've almost collectively, and I think that family is a good example of it. I think we combine a couple major figures to almost split the difference and create one collective ideal.
Yes.
One beauty standard.
Yeah. And there's different elements of like ethnicity and race in there too. It's really
Sure.
interesting. It's like we want to have like, you know, blonde hair, but also be really, really tan, but also have this kind of body type, but not like, so it's like we're picking and choosing all the best parts from different types of people and putting them all into one weird person. And that's what we all want to look like. And like, I think the parts that broke my heart the most were when she was like at the dance school and like around all the other girls and comparing herself to them, because that shit starts early. I think you were asking me in the car on the way home from the movie, like, when does that feeling begin? And I was like, around 10. And you were sort of very surprised by that, because I think around age 10 is when you really start to be aware of yourself in comparison to others. It's when you start to be interested in romantic attention. It's when you start to really pit yourself against everybody else, versus when you're young, you don't really pay attention to how you look. You want to feel pretty. Like, oh, I think every little girl, I don't know, most of the time, they all want to feel pretty from like the get-go. You watch pretty princesses, you like pretty dresses, you want to look good, but like not in a way that is, you know, detrimental to your self-esteem. That happens around age 10. And it's like, that's when you start to get self-conscious. That's when you start to really second guess yourself. And, which is like a good natural thing to happen. You want to have like self-censorship and you want to think critically about what you say and do, but it's at this horrible cost of like impacting your self-esteem.
There's a level of doubt and shame that becomes unhelpful.
Yes. And it's so sad, and it continues for like most people throughout their entire lives. And that's like, there's ways you learn to navigate that, but it is, especially now when you're faced with beautiful faces all day, every day on your phone.
That's true.
Faces that aren't real, faces that have been altered by filters, by Photoshop, by plastic surgery. Like, we talk about aging gracefully, and about how like my favorite example is, oh, Anne Hathaway is aging so gracefully. I'm like, she's gotten so much work done. You can't tell because she's gotten very good work done, but she doesn't look like that. Nobody looks like that. Like, we are constantly faced with this, especially as you age, like this pressure to look beautiful even as you age, but don't look too fake, but don't look too natural, because natural is ugly. And like, it's so hard. It's so hard.
I'm always interested by the pages I see on Instagram, particularly because that is a visual medium.
Mm-hmm.
When I see pages and it's women who are absolutely AI or CGI, whatever the word is, they're fake.
They're not real.
They're a construction. And I always like looking at the comments. We do like dramatic readings of the comments.
They're very
because
funny.
Because it's hundreds of guys who can't tell.
They think it's a real person. Yeah. And they're like, you're so beautiful. And they've all got their full names and their profiles too.
Of course. Their social security number.
It's incredible.
Like, you can tell almost just from the like uncanny valley aspect,
right,
that this isn't real.
But it's scary that so many people think they are. But that's the other thing, is even if you know they're not real, I don't know what it's like for you, but me as a woman, I see an AI image of a woman who's gorgeous and I know she's not real. But there's still a part of me that wishes I looked like that. Like, it's so impossible to remove that comparison, to feel worse about yourself after looking at other people. And I think this movie really highlights the true horror of that experience.
Yes.
So well. It captures just how tormented that feels. And I think, like we said, like the futility of all this work that she's putting in to look how she wants to look and to feel better about herself, and then none of it matters and it all undoes itself anyway. And you look at her and you're like, she was good looking before she did any of this. She was styling herself in an unflattering way. The braces didn't help, but like, she's a good looking person, and it's like so sad
But none
that
of
she
the
thought she had
surgeries-
to do any of that.
But none of the surgeries are addressing her self-image. Like,
Of
she's
course
never
not.
dealing with that part of it.
No,
This
no.
is not a therapy movie.
No, it's not like,
You know what I
oh,
mean?
if only I just got a nose job, I'd feel better about myself. Like, no, you wouldn't. Like, you might like your nose better, but if you've got some deep-seated self-image, self-esteem problems, the nose job isn't going to do it. And that's like what's really, really sad.
And I think even as you're going through, and I do think some of this is universal. I'm identifying with a lot of what you're saying about
Sure.
self-image. It's interesting because during that era, when you do begin to compare yourself to everyone and shit on yourself for all these different reasons, you're still able to show empathy to other people and feel empathy for other people and their plights. And if your friend was saying something about how they hate the way they look and hate the way they feel, you would reach out to them and say all the right things, but there's just this brick wall that keeps you from applying those rules to yourself.
Yes, it's impossible
And
to do.
I thought this film dramatized that division, that sort of contradiction really well. There are certain shots of Agnes after she has her kind of fall from grace, when they find her with the stable boy and the mother basically enslaves her on
Yeah.
this farm.
Yeah.
And she treats her like absolute dirt. And you see the dirt all over her face. They kind of dirty her up
Yeah,
as
yeah.
she's walking around. She's not wearing these beautiful fine clothes, but she's got her hair up and she still looks great. And I love, there's a certain shot that I almost used as the thumbnail for this episode, where it's her grieving over the body of her father, and she's just rotting in the other room.
Yeah.
And there's a little light falling on his face. His, skin's falling in. He's really decomposing.
Yeah.
And there's also this light falling on Agnes, and she's kind of draped over the side of the body. And it should be this horrifying moment, but it's framed and blocked so beautifully, where she looks so ornate. She looks like a painting, She still looks incredible, even though all of this has happened.
Yes.
And she's in this agony. But there's this division between how we perceive her and how she's feeling. And I think the film constantly plays with that division. I thought that was really effective. There were just certain shots here that I could talk about for days.
Yeah.
And it was constant through the film. There was such a duality here.
Yeah, it was beautifully directed. This movie looked so good.
First time director too.
It was really, really great. And like there's so many amazing shots of the food and like the lushness and like over consumption of it all, and like that was really interesting. And like I think it really highlighted the frivolity of the Victorian age, but also what that level of superficiality, with that level, like what that does to like the intense emotional societal effect that had on people, right? This like intense obsession with everything being beautiful and lovely and everybody looking gorgeous and everybody adhering to this particular silhouette, and it actually like ruining everybody's lives.
I feel like the metric that so many of the characters were judged by was effort. Right. Some of the characters were, and because it is so much about visual and looks, it was these characters seem to be effortlessly beautiful, and the other characters are constantly grinding away and putting in effort to look beautiful. But that was always balanced by their internal lives. And you see the amount of struggle that Agnes has kind of pile up through the film, and Elvira's shifts as she looks better and better. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think so. Yeah.
It's interesting the way those things intersect and cross over.
Yes, for sure. Again, yeah, I liked that we followed both of them and that we were invested and understood both of them.
Their fortunes reverse, their looks reverse. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. I know
But
what you mean.
we're constantly pulling at those things because we assume when someone is beautiful that they have their shit together.
Right.
And that they are leading an ideal life and everything's going swimmingly for them.
Right.
And I think because we're charting this course of looking good and making yourself look as good as possible while this internal world falls apart. Again, I just think we're dramatizing that really effectively.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. This movie was really impactful in a way I did not anticipate. It was really excellent. I can't recommend it enough.
It was heartbreaking.
It was. And I I don't know if I want to watch it again. It was a lot. It was tough, but it was really beautiful. And I'm so glad we saw it in a theater. Like you said at the top of the episode, this is available on Shudder. It's a Shudder original, so go check it out. We have lots of other horror discussions on our...
Lots of other Shudder originals
yeah,
to talk about.
We do. Yeah. We did The Rule of Jenny Penn a couple weeks ago. That was also a Shudder original. We did, of course, talk about The Substance when it came out last fall. And we've got lots of other episodes in our repertoire that you can check out.
We talked about Azrael. I think that was a Shudder original.
Yeah, you might
we
be
talked
right.
about that over on the Patreon.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a Patreon. It's $2 a month. For that low price, you can support the show and access our whole back catalog of bonus episodes, including our Breakfast Buffet series. I'm thinking of a particular episode in that series where we talked about female body horror. We talked about 5 or 6 different horror movies, all around like women and body horror. And it was
stop motion. Remember that?
Yeah,
that little British indie film with the clay.
If you liked the discussion, you'll really like that discussion. Yeah. So go check that out. It's where the link to the Patreon is down below.
Love Lies Bleeding, the Suspiria remake.
And
there was a lot in that.
And
one.
like the new Omen, and also the
first Omen. Yeah.
And whatever the Sydney Sweeney nun one. There were 2 nun movies.
Immaculate.
Yes, Immaculate. Yeah, that was a great discussion. It was so much fun. Anyway, we got a lot in there. Also, another way to support us is by purchasing Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. It's
some body horror in there.
There is some body horror, and there's some friendship and all kinds of fun things. It is Monty Python meets Ridley Scott's Alien. It's really delightful. You can read it as a book in paperback or ebook format, or you can listen to the audio drama, which Cam directed and started. And it's very cool.
Absolutely foul noises.
He sure does.
Drama.
It's very gross and very fun.
Gurgling, burbling, evil little monsters.
You can find links to all of these things in our description of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought of this movie, any other movies we should check out that are in this realm. And we'll catch you in another few days. Nope. We'll catch you in a few days with another brand new episode.